I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
Palestine will be free. New York City, you will see.
Palestine will be free.
Palestine will be free.
Netanyahu, you will learn.
Netanyahu, you will learn.
Refugees will return.
Refugees will return.
Netanyahu, you will learn.
Netanyahu, you will learn.
Refugees will return.
Refugees will return.
Free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Free.
Okay, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays. And you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. That clip there was from Indie News Network. That is one of the many actions that are happening today in reference to the conflict between Israel and Palestine. So there are several Free Palestine protests that are happening today across the country, and that one is from New York City. So welcome all. We do have a lot to discuss in reference to that particular issue. That is actually where I'm going to spend most of my time today for this segment. So I'm actually going to try to jump right in. I usually give shout outs in the chat, but I'm actually going to try to go ahead and jump right in so we can get into it, because that is going to be more of a lengthy discussion because I have a lot to say. So first and foremost, shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. I had issues again with Rumble. I don't know what's going on there, but people on Rumble will be able to see it once it uploads as well, because I do the YouTube sync, so they'll see it anyway. But yeah, I got to figure out what's going on there with Rumble. But first and foremost, let's go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. You're out here doing the damn thing, keeping the lights on around me in the house. Thank you so much. If you are interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters. There's also Sabbies in the house, members as well. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you guys so much. You really are out here doing the damn thing. Doing the thing. All right. So let me go ahead and share that thumbnail so you'll see what we're going to discuss tonight. I only have 3 stories because one of them is going to take up most of the time for the show, at least I believe so. I have a lot of links for that particular segment. Tonight, we are discussing RFK Jr., Hakeem Jeffries, and Cornel West, the uproar on Israel. And you'll see there is Netanyahu there kind of in the center. Obviously, I'm sure most of you have heard about the uprising yesterday from Hamas towards Israel, the state of Israel. We're going to get into all of that. I have a lot to say. I'm going to break down what this conflict really means, where it started, how we got here, and so people understand what this is really about. And then I'm also going to get into the particular politicians and political candidates and their response in reference to this uprising yesterday. And I want to explain to you what we should be saying and what we should be advocating for. There were some disappointments yesterday on Twitter, but there were also some positives as well. I'm also going to discuss Joe Biden impeachment bombshell, and you'll notice that Matt Gaetz is there right next to him. Why is Matt Gaetz there, and what does this have to do with him? So I haven't seen a lot of people cover this story, and I think you guys need to hear it. And last but not least, I am going to discuss Hillary Clinton. Whoops. Hillary Clinton wants to deprogram people. Oh, yes, she does, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to get into all of it. Okay? All of it. Shout out to Zachary for the super chat. It's infuriating seeing people defend Israel. My brother's a huge Ben Shapiro fan and thus has the complete opposite view as I do on Israel-Palestine. Can't discuss with family. Raised Reformed Jewish, currently agnostic. Yeah, there's a lot of tension in the air today, and there was yesterday as well. And I think one of the things that's been really revealing to me, and probably to you as well if you were on social media yesterday, is that some of the people, particularly some of these celebrities that you may have thought were right on other issues, have apparently gotten this issue incredibly wrong. Some of them have actually deleted tweets as well, but that's a whole nother story. But first and foremost, we want to get into this discussion here about this Joe Biden impeachment bombshell. I have an update. So you know that the GOP members of the House have decided to file an impeachment inquiry against Joe Biden in reference to his business dealings with Hunter Biden and countries like China, countries like Ukraine, etc. Now, that was announced, I feel like, a couple of weeks ago, but for the most part, I do feel like mainstream media has remained somewhat silent on this particular issue, especially liberal mainstream media. But now there is new information that I think people need to hear. I want to start with this clip here from Fox News, where it says jaw-dropping legal experts reveal the next steps in the Biden impeachment inquiry. And then we're going to get into this issue with Matt Gaetz and what does he have to do with all of this? Because I think that's very important. You need to hear about what has been leaked from Matt Gaetz. Let's go ahead and get started with this clip here from Fox News.
Meanwhile, we are looking at the House's hearing. The House held its first impeachment inquiry hearing yesterday against President Biden. Here's Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer laying things out for us this week. Watch.
At least 10 times, Joe Biden lied to the American people that he never spoke to his family about their business dealings. He lied by telling the American people that there was an absolute wall between his official government duties and his personal life. Let's be clear. There was no wall.
Law professor Jonathan Turley, one of the witnesses yesterday, broke down how President Biden could have benefited from foreign influence peddling. Watch.
Can a benefit to your family be a benefit to you?
It is. There's been repeated statements that you need to show that President Biden accepted direct money in order for this to constitute a benefit, even under criminal cases that deal with bribery, extortion, the Hobbs Act. The courts actually have rejected that. They've said that money going to family members is in fact a benefit.
I don't know what happened there. That's weird. Hold on one second. I don't know why ad's showing. I guess because I have to redo my ad blocker and everything now, but let me just let that play. And let me actually pull that out while that does that. Notice what he just said there. That piece I think was really important. He said, we have to show that there have been direct payments. Okay. Direct payments. So hold on to that and keep that in mind. That's going to be important when we get to this discussion about Matt Gaetz.
Joining me right now is former federal prosecutor and Fox News contributor, Andrew McCarthy. Andy, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Hi, Maria.
What is your assessment of that hearing and where we are right now in terms of this impeachment inquiry? Give us your opinion.
Well, you know, Maria, I thought that there were a lot of people yesterday who said they were disappointed because there didn't seem to be any smoking gun or anything that came out of the hearing. And I just think that's a testament to the success of the committee process going up into the impeachment inquiry, because if you knew nothing at all about any of this going into yesterday, and they told you that the Biden family between 2014 and 2019 raked in $24 million from corrupt and anti-American regimes, or at least people connected to them, that would be jaw-dropping. So part of the reason I think people came away from yesterday's hearing a little bit disappointed is because we've heard all this stuff before because of the tremendous progress that the other committees made.
We're going to pause here because I want to read this part. House Republicans release memo on scope of impeachment inquiry. This will span the time of Joe Biden's vice presidency to the present, including his time out of office. So this is not just right before his presidency, during his presidency, but also during his time as vice president. So they went pretty far back, and will investigate whether Hunter Biden as vice president, will investigate whether Biden as vice president / president changed policy because of money given to the family. Those two pieces here are incredibly important.
And yesterday was just a pretty standard hearing that you would do at the beginning of anything as important as an impeachment inquiry, to explain what is required for impeachment and give a general outline of what you think you're going to prove.
And this part right here, this is something else that they will look at. Did Joe Biden enrich himself and family by giving foreign interests the sense they would receive access to him? So that piece is incredibly important, right? Like, so one of the reasons why, if you were not born in the United States, you cannot be president in the United States, is that they see you as a risk. They see you as, if you were offered money for information from your home country, that you may be willing to take that money and give up that information. So that piece right there is incredibly important in the sense that they would receive access to him. The other piece here, did Joe Biden use his power to impede, obstruct, or hinder investigations and prosecutions of Hunter Biden? That is also important. Did he use his power to protect his son? So hold on to that.
In the coming hearings. And I think that's what they did yesterday. And, their process is a little bit unwieldy. They had 47 different members asking 5-minute rounds of questions. So it's hard to, it's hard to stay with one thread for any sustained length of time. But, this is going to be a long process.
Well, let's talk about some of the potential evidence that the House Republicans have talked about. This $260,000 in wire payments. There was one check for $250,000 and another check for $10,000 from Hunter Biden's Chinese business partners, labeled as a personal investment. Despite Hunter's legal team claiming that the money was part of a loan, the beneficiary address for that wire was listed as Joe Biden's Delaware home. And I find this really striking because at the time, Hunter was living in California.
That part right there. So they are saying that one of the wire transfers went to Joe Biden's home in Delaware. Now, again, it was Hunter Biden that had the business dealings. So why would the money go to Joe Biden's home instead of going to Hunter Biden's home? And they're claiming that Hunter Biden during that time was living in California. So they believe that this is some type of proof to show that that money did at some point go directly to Joe Biden, and not just to Joe Biden, but to his residence. So that piece is very crucial.
So Hunter's living in California, but his Chinese partners decide to send $250,000 to Joe Biden's home. And by the way, this is not like a long time ago. This is 2019. So, in 2019, as Joe Biden is getting ready to run and he's in the middle of his campaign for president, he receives $250,000 at his home from Chinese business partners.
Imagine if we knew that before Joe Biden ran for president. Imagine if we knew that back in 2019. You see, these are the type of things that would have been helpful for people to know. I think that could have maybe changed some people's decisions in reference to whether or not they were going to support Joe Biden. But imagine if people had, American voters had that key piece of information back in 2019 when it happened, or going into 2020. Imagine.
I asked House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer about the White House's excuse on this, and here's what he told me yesterday on this program. Watch.
Hunter Biden was living with his dad during COVID. Well, there's two problems with that lie that Ian Sam said. Number one, COVID hadn't happened yet. We were 6 months away from COVID happening. And number two, Hunter lived in California. And that's according to his own book.
That part right there. The place of residence in 2019. In 2019, they're trying to they're basically trying to say that Hunter Biden was living with Joe Biden during that time. And that's why the wire transfer went to Joe Biden's residence in Delaware. Okay. They said he was living with him during the pandemic. 2019, the pandemic had not started yet, people. The pandemic started in 2020. So that lie doesn't add up. I can't even believe they tried to go with that one. You think American people forgot when the pandemic started? Let's continue.
That time, he lived in California. So the wire was sent to Joe Biden's house in Delaware while he was a candidate for president.
Mm-hmm.
So at the same time, Andy, the House Ways and Means Committee released an email from an IRS agent writing about a CNN producer who claims to have a Hunter Biden email where Hunter expected his legal stuff, quote unquote, to go away when his father became president. And
that's Hunter Biden using his privilege, right? That's Hunter Biden using his privilege. I have all these legal issues. I may have some possible criminal issues, but it looks like my dad is going to become president, so I won't have to deal with these things after all. This is people that come from families that have power, families that have privilege. This is an example of the siblings trying to use, their parents' power and privilege to get them out of their jabs. Think about this. Now they're saying they have an email that says this. Once again, you would have thought from Hillary Clinton's emails, you would have thought that enough people, particularly those that have any type of connection in Washington, that they would know it's probably not best to put certain things in an email. But no, they still don't get it. Hunter Biden, not too bright, right? Not too bright that he's willing to put something like that in an email, which is actually him confirming that he knew he did bad things.
How is the White House going to, wash away these things? And what is your assessment of those two things in terms of evidence?
Well, first, Maria, didn't you and I also expect the case to go away when Joe Biden became president? I mean, who in America didn't expect the case to go away on Hunter when Joe became president? Look, I think if there's an error here, it's that we've indulged, or the committees have indulged too much, this idea that, there's Hunter Biden's business dealings, and we have to figure out what, if anything, Joe Biden knew about them, what connection he may have had to them. And I think that's just the wrong way to look at it. The right way to look at this is that Joe Biden was the business. There's no business without Joe Biden. He could have shut this down in 10 seconds if he objected to it, and yet it went on for years and years. Without him, there's no business. Access to him is the business.
That word right there, that key word, access. You see the problem here? And this is what they're going to try to argue. Because he has that access to Joe Biden, that's how the business happened in the first place, because of who his father was. So the argument that they're making is that without Joe Biden, this business transaction doesn't even happen. So there is the connection. He is connected. He is involved. This is all very interesting.
And as you mentioned with our friend John Turley before, and we also got this from yesterday from the witness, the woman who was a top official in the tax division at the Justice Department. If you make payments to somebody by paying somebody close to them, like a close family member, that's a constructive payment to the person. That's the way the IRS looks at it. That's the way the government looks at it. You know, you can't get a security clearance in the United States unless you fill out a book-length application where you have to lay out not only your own transactions and your own connections with people overseas, but all of your close family members, because that's the way the government has always looked at it. That's the way people get blackmailed. That's the way that benefits get conferred from foreign powers to government officials. It's what the intelligence community worries about. So I just don't see why we're continuing to talk about this as if it were Hunter Biden's business, when you see $25 million going one way and no value coming back the other way. The only thing here that's valuable is access to Joe Biden.
That part is very important. And I think that piece right there is what they are going to do, what they're going to use to push back against Joe Biden. That without you, this does not happen. And security clearances aren't easy to get. So this is all very telling. This is all very telling. Now, when you see what I have to show you from Matt Gaetz, that is going to throw a wrench in this entire impeachment inquiry. Because we have leaked audio of Matt Gaetz, who's kind of saying the opposite here. I don't know what this is all about with Matt Gaetz, but that could actually cause issue with this. And as she mentioned, this is going to be a long process. So for people who are maybe somewhat getting excited that this is going to be done or all said and done with before 2024 election, we don't know that. We don't know. But I think that's what the GOP is trying to accomplish.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why from the beginning, I said this is a Joe Biden investigation, not a Hunter Biden investigation only. And the fact is it's laughable when the Democrats say that Joe Biden doesn't have any fingerprints on this, because the whole business was Joe Biden. And we're also seeing evidence of a cover up, that the DOJ knew all of this, and yet they still, turned a blind eye. But instead, they're doubling down on Trump. One of your latest op-eds asks the question, did a judge go too far in New York's civil case against Trump? Tell me more about that. I mean, this is
We'll pause it here because this case, the civil case against Donald Trump, I don't think is the one that Trump is going to really have to worry about as much. I think the one he's really going to have to worry about is the case in Georgia, the case with Fulton County. I think that's going to be the one that they're really going to be able to get him, is that one. Not necessarily this New York one. And the New York one, again, that is like a civil thing, and it involves his business dealings and stuff. That one I don't think is going to be the one that can possibly prevent him from running for president in 2024. I think it's going to be that case that's coming out of Georgia. But the point that they're trying to make here is, was there a conflict of interest? Is there differential treatment when it came to Joe Biden's business dealings and Donald Trump's business dealings and the DOJ? Now, of course, Merrick Garland has issued statements before saying that the DOJ is not partisan, but I think we all know that's not true. I think we all know that's not true. I think that there have been many people, not just the DOJ, but many people in Washington, D.C., as well as media outlets that have gone out of their way to try to cover up this issue for Joe Biden, and have also tried to cover up the sexual assault allegation from Tara Reade against Joe Biden. We will have to wait and see where this goes. But I do have this bombshell as well. This is something I was not expecting. Apparently, when it comes to this impeachment inquiry, it turns out that Matt Gaetz, who obviously is a Republican congressman, he's saying the exact opposite. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. According to Matt Gaetz, this impeachment inquiry is not valid and actually is not going anywhere. Listen to this. I was surprised to hear this, but there is leaked audio that shows a conversation with Matt Gaetz where he is actually saying that this impeachment effort is actually not even serious and it doesn't stand a chance. Listen to this, folks.
NBC News, Garrett, as you know, has a video of Congressman Gaetz denouncing the House impeachment inquiry, the latest one, as a political stunt at a fundraiser. Jim Jordan was really the brain I guess the mastermind of that behind all of it. So is that directed at Jim Jordan? What's your takeaway?
I think you're going to hear the audio in a second, but Matt Gaetz is basically, she just said he's saying that this was actually just a political stunt.
Well, Gaetz took great pains later in this fundraiser to not make this about Jim Jordan. Some context here, Andrea. If you watched the debate on the House floor on Tuesday that led to Kevin McCarthy's ouster, Gaetz was pretty critical of the impeachment inquiry even then. He called it failure theater. And we're learning now, thanks to the reporting of my colleague Catherine Doyle, that this is something he was saying back in late September at a private Zoom-only fundraiser being
private Zoom fundraiser apparently was not so private after all.
very critical of the effort as it existed at the time to investigate the Biden family. Here's what he told those donors behind the scenes.
Pause before we get into the audio. So again, notice what he said. Here's what he told those donors. These are donors that he's meeting with. So could that have an influence on what he said in that meeting? Possibly. But I think you need to hear what he said.
I don't believe that we are endeavoring upon a legitimate impeachment of Joe Biden. I mean, Kevin McCarthy didn't even have the votes for an impeachment inquiry, and you're telling me that he's somehow going to get the votes for an impeachment? So I think that Kevin McCarthy just wants the specter of impeachment so that he's able to subjugate any threat to his power as an impeachment impediment.
Now, Gaetz is a pretty...
Hold on here. Let's go back. Let's go back, because you don't usually see them turn on members of their own like this. But because it involved Kevin McCarthy, that could be the reason. Listen.
I don't believe that we are endeavoring upon a legitimate impeachment of Joe Biden. I mean, Kevin McCarthy didn't even have the votes for an impeachment inquiry, and you're telling me that he's somehow going to get the votes for an impeachment? So I think that Kevin McCarthy just wants the specter of impeachment so that he's able to subjugate any threat to his power as an impeachment impediment.
And now Kevin McCarthy is gone. So think about that. So this is Matt Gaetz. I don't know if you want to say he's speaking out against his own party, but he's more so speaking out against Kevin McCarthy. And Kevin McCarthy has now been ousted as speaker. But Matt Gaetz is basically telling you that this impeachment inquiry is not even that serious or not serious. Or as Nick, my comrade Nick from RBN would say, unserious is unserious. And this is going to be very important because the thing is like, we do know that Matt Gaetz obviously is very vocal. Right? Like he forced the vote against Kevin McCarthy. He's the reason that Kevin McCarthy has been ousted as speaker. He drove that, right? So we know that he has a powerful voice and people are going to listen to what he has to say, whether they agree with him or not. But to have him, a member of the Republican Party, tell you that, no, this impeachment inquiry against Joe Biden is not serious, that could actually hurt the impeachment inquiry. Let's continue.
Now, Gaetz is a pretty unpopular figure up here on Capitol Hill right now, especially among Republicans. That's not going to make him any more popular within his conference. But he's also proven to be a pretty astute observer of the political dynamics. And I think in a situation where you're looking at a, divided Congress, Democrats controlling the Senate, the idea that an impeachment inquiry is not going to go anywhere and that it may have been useful for Kevin McCarthy in that moment is an analysis that if you gave a lot of these lawmakers truth serum, they would probably agree with. Andrea?
Okay, so he doesn't believe that this is actually going to go anywhere. And I've been thinking about this for quite some time. I remember when the Democrats actually had the majority in the House and they pushed forth the impeachment inquiry in reference to Donald Trump. And, it didn't go anywhere. Even if it does pass in the House, it has to pass in the Senate. And same thing happened with Bill Clinton. I remember this very well. It didn't pass in the Senate. So Bill Clinton got to keep his seat as well. So I honestly don't think, and I'm just keeping it real with you guys, I do not think that Joe Biden is going to be impeached. I think it will not pass in the Senate, even if it does pass in the House. And I think it'll be hard for it to pass in the House as well, to be honest with you, because some of the Republicans do not approve of it. One of them apparently being Matt Gaetz. He doesn't think this is legit. So we will continue to follow this story, but we also need to ask ourselves, what's in this for Matt Gaetz? You notice he's been in the media a lot recently, right? What is Matt Gaetz trying to do? Does he want to be speaker? Is Matt Gaetz going to run for a higher level position? I don't know. But I start to wonder when I see politicians in the media a lot, especially back to back. But we'll have to keep an eye on it, guys. But remember what they said, that direct payment that went to Joe Biden's residence in Delaware, that's going to be crucial. Going to go to some of the comments here in the chat. Shout out to Roger Meadows, who's been a member for 6 months. Love the earring, Sab. You look like a genie. Oh, thank you. I like these too. I think I got these from Temu. I'm shopping like you guys know Temu? I'm shopping like a billionaire. Temu. I don't buy anything from Temu anymore because some of the like shirts I got from Temu, I put them in the washing machine and they came out unshirt like. It's really cheap. Their stuff is really cheap, but you know. Thank you for the super chat, Old Crow. Just sending some love, Sabby. Love your content. Thank you, Old Crow. Thank you very much. I'll take those comments on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you so much for the tip, Dave Burt. Thanks for keeping the power crazed honest as possible, Sabs, as long as we have to deal with them. Thank you, Roger Meadows, for the tip on Rockfin. Sab, remember when I told you about the 2015 Model Corporate Charter Revocation Act, aka the corporate death penalty that allows state attorney generals to carry that out for egregious behavior. That's exactly what New York State Attorney General James is employing. Although there might be a basis for it, it still is a political hit. You know how many corporations here that are egregiously worse, but she is not touching. Interesting. All right, we're going to get into our next story here. I'll come to that after this. We'll get into our next story here. So, you know, every time you think Hillary is gone away, she seems to remind us that she is not finished speaking. She is appearing again, whether she's coming out with a new book, whether she's teaching a master class, or whether she's having another interview to complain about why she lost and to blame everyone but herself. Hillary just seems to come back like a boomerang. We can't get rid of her, right? So she had a recent interview with Christine on CNN, and there were some comments made here, particularly about the MAGA voters, that population, that really gave some people pause. And here's the thing. I don't care if she said it about any other group. She could have said about any group, but it's what she says that makes you think like, whoa, what is this lady really trying to do? But it's very apparent to me when I see Hillary Clinton repeatedly appear in the media, it makes me wonder, is it possible that she will try to run for president again or run for something again? But here she is with Christine. Let's go ahead and get into this discussion here. This is something else I got to tell you.
So when you look at how to go forward for the country, as you say, is there any area of coalition building that could happen? There are pragmatic Republicans, as you say. Could there be a whole new way of trying to, get legislation going and cross-party governance going by Democrats and certain Republicans forming a coalition?
Well,
it's interesting to me how they continue to ask people that are no longer politicians what should be done to make the country move forward. It's not just Hillary Clinton. They ask Barack Obama. They continue to bring him back. Every now and then they may ask Bill Clinton. All these people that are no longer in politics anymore. What are they going to do? Just interesting to me. But with her in particular, it would not surprise me if she tries to run for president again.
Saw the number of Republicans who voted along with Democrats to keep the government open. So there's clearly a common sense, sane part of the Republican caucus in the House. But I think they are intimidated. They oftentimes say and do things which they know better than to say or do. And it will require us defeating those most extreme measures and the people who promote them in order to try to get to some common ground where people can, again, work together.
By common ground, I just want to tell you what she really means. When she says get to some type of common ground where people can work together, Whenever you hear politicians or former politicians make that statement, at least the ones that come from DC, what they're really saying is that get everybody on board with the status quo. Because you can have common ground over other things, but if the status quo doesn't accept it, it's not going to pass. For example, there is bipartisan support in reference to something like Medicare for all, maybe not exactly Bernie Sanders' bill in particular, but giving everybody health care in this country. There is bipartisan support when it comes to stop giving this money to Ukraine for this war, this conflict between Russia and Ukraine. There's bipartisan support among different issues that affect the American people. But if those issues are not backed by the status quo and are not approved by the military industrial complex or the Wall Street corporations, then it's not going to pass because it doesn't have corporate interests. So when she says that, what she's really telling you is she's talking about come together for the status quo, remain in the center, not to the left, not to the far left, not to the right, not to the far right, but in the middle, which still has a capitalist structure.
It's the way it used to be. I mean, we had very strong partisans in both parties in the past, and we had very bitter battles over all kinds of things, gun control and climate change and the economy and taxes. But there wasn't this little tail of extremism wagging the dog of the Republican Party as it is today. Mm-hmm. And sadly, so many of those extremists, those MAGA extremists, take their marching orders from Donald Trump.
Pause. Let's go back to what she said here about that tail of the Republican Party. Listen to this.
Of the Republican Party as it is today. Mm-hmm. And sadly, so many of those extremists, those MAGA extremists, take their marching orders from Donald Trump.
Sorry, I didn't go back far enough. I think it's right there.
Kinds of things, gun control and climate change and the economy and taxes. But there wasn't this little tail of extremism wagging the dog of the Republican Party.
Let me pause there because there's something I want to point out. She's talking about that type of extremism in DC. She's talking about among the politicians. And when she says wagging the tail, she's talking about driving that party in some way, shape, or form. And she believes that came from Donald Trump. I'm here to tell you something. You know, I've lived in a lot of different places, and there was nothing that Donald Trump said on that stage when he was, whether it was debate or when he was campaigning, there was nothing that he said that was shocking to me because I had already heard people say those things in this country. The comments that he made about the immigrants, the comments that he made about Black people, you have nothing to lose, like that kind of, the comments that he made that tend to excite his base, but obviously bothered a lot of people outside of that base. For some people, especially those of us that live in like these liberal enclaves, that was shocking. This is unheard of. Did you hear what he just said? Da, 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 da. I live in Massachusetts. A lot of people here couldn't believe someone was saying those things out loud. But like I told you before, Donald Trump was covert. overt. Joe Biden is covert. You have Democrats that feel that way too. They just don't say it the way that he says it. But what I can tell you, especially when I lived in the South, when I lived in red states, when I lived in South Carolina, when I lived in North Carolina, when it was still a red state, I think it's kind of purplish now. I heard people make those statements all the time. Why are those people coming here? They're taking our jobs. They're bringing in criminals. They're causing crime. I heard those statements when I was in high school. I heard those statements when I was in college. So to me, that rhetoric was not new. That rhetoric was new and shocking to the people like Hillary Clinton, the elite liberals who have kind of surrounded themselves in these liberal enclaves around a lot of academics. And they were not used to hearing that type of language. This is why it's important that people get outside of their bubble. So for me, it wasn't new. And so for some people, it was surprising. How in the world could they have politicians in DC that are saying these things? Have you never had politicians in DC saying those things? I'm pretty sure you have, but it happened behind closed doors. Talk about the audio tapes that have been released in reference to Ronald Reagan. Some of the comments that he made about Black people, calling Black people animals. He didn't say it on a debate stage, but he still said it. The problem that a lot of people had with Donald Trump was the fact that Donald Trump said that shit out loud. And a lot of people are just like, you don't say that shit out loud. You keep it behind closed doors, damn it. That's what that was really about. Oh, let me go back. She goes on though. Hold on. There we go.
Wagging the dog of the Republican Party as it is today. Mm-hmm. And sadly, so many of those extremists, those MAGA extremists, take their marching orders from Donald Trump, who has no credibility left by any measure. He's only in it for himself. He's now defending himself in civil actions and criminal actions. And when do they break with him?
Hillary's really not the one to talk about credibility. And we want to talk about criminal actions. Remember the Clintons and the Whitewater issue, which, by the way, they got away with scot-free. They got away with scot-free. They had their legal issues too. So she really not the one to talk about credibility. Oh my God.
Because at some point, maybe there needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members, but something needs to happen.
And how do you do that?
Deprogramming. So this is the controversial statement that kind of sent people off the cliff, is when Hillary said that the MAGA supporters need to be deprogrammed. I'm sorry, but what's with the comments? Deprogramming. She called people super predators before. She called people deplorables. This is that elite liberal style of thinking. This is actually how they think. This is actually how they talk. She thinks they need to be deprogrammed. Does Hillary Clinton not realize that some of the people that voted for Donald Trump voted for him not because of the rhetoric that he had in reference to different people, but because he came and spoke to their working class communities, and Hillary Clinton chose not to? When she decided to ignore people in the Rust Belt. And here's the thing, even if she did visit, you can say all the right things. You can say, I care about the working class people. But when you come across kind of prudish and snobby and I deserve this and I went to this school and I da-da-da-da, when you go into those communities to talk to those people, you're kind of talking down to them. And it's a turnoff. And a lot of people were turned off from Hillary Clinton. That's the problem. So you have a lot of working class people in the Rust Belt. Hillary Clinton was a turnoff to them because she's one of those people where she not only thinks she's better than you, she tells you she's better than you in many ways. If she's calling you a deplorable, she thinks she's better than you. If she's calling the Black people, especially in reference to the crime bill, if she's calling Black people super predators and all that shit, she thinks she's better than you. So sometimes it's not even just what you say, but the way that you say it. And Hillary does not have that. She ain't got no charm. She don't know how to read a room. She don't know how to talk to working class people. And you would have thought she would have known this from her husband, because Bill Clinton knew how to talk to those communities and Hillary Clinton did not. And so she's still upset. She's still pissed that Donald Trump beat her. Here it is years later. She still can't get over it. She wrote a whole book about it. I was going to be that little girl to grow up and be the first woman president. Like, this woman is still whining. Here it is years later. Entitlement. She thinks she deserves it. She don't even think she deserves it. She thinks it was owed to her. Now, this woman, the interviewer, Christine, goes, she's going to go in to ask, how do you deprogram?
Needs to happen.
And how do you do that? Because you said you have to defeat them by defeating their leader. Their leader is Donald Trump. Even you have said that you expect him to be the Republican nominee. How does this change at all?
At this point, I think, sadly, he will still likely be the nominee, and we have to defeat him. And we have to defeat those who are the election deniers, as we did in 2020 and 2022. And we have to, just be smarter about how we are trying to empower the right people inside the Republican Party. Nancy.
Catch that phrase. Empower the right people inside the Republican Party. Now, if you're a Democrat, Hillary, why are you even trying to empower people in the Republican Party at all? This is like when Nancy Pelosi said, we need a strong Republican Party. Why would you be worried about the Republican Party? Shouldn't you be focused on strengthening your own party? You know why? Because at the end of the day, both of those parties are corporate, and that's what they want to work together on.
Nancy Pelosi had a majority of 5 votes when she was Speaker. Kevin McCarthy had a majority of 5 votes. Nancy Pelosi passed consequential legislation, and she clearly had members within her caucus who, ranged across a spectrum of political beliefs and ideology, and she kept everybody together, and she kept everybody focused on the future. He couldn't do that. And so he paid a price, but more importantly, the country paid a price.
They didn't want Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy wasn't wanted. Do we not remember it took, 15 rounds for Kevin McCarthy to be elected as Speaker? And people actually thought that this was going to go great for Kevin McCarthy? People actually thought that? Okay.
And so when you see another matchup between potentially Trump and President Biden, what goes through your mind? And particularly, how do you process that this person who defeated you back in 2016 is still at it, given all that you've said? 91 indictments, civil fraud, sexual transgressions according to the courts. How is this still happening?
Notice she brings up the sexual transgressions in reference to Donald Trump, but not to Joe Biden.
It's a classic tale of an authoritarian populist who really has a grip on the emotional, psychological needs and desires of a portion of the population. And the base of the Republican Party, for whatever combination of reasons, and it is emotional and psychological, sees in him someone who speaks for them. And they are determined that they will continue to vote for him, attend his rallies, wear his merchandise, because for whatever reason, he and his very negative, nasty form of politics resonates with them. Maybe they don't like it.
For whatever reason. And see, she still hasn't figured out what the reason is. Because when Donald Trump spoke to those people, particularly those in the Rust Belt, he said, what did he say? I see you. When he spoke to working class people, he was like, I see you. You've been forgotten. Particularly those Rust Belt towns that were pretty much all white. He said, I see you. You've been forgotten. If Hillary Clinton hasn't been able to figure out at this point in time why people backed him then and why people continue to back him now, she has seriously failed as a politician in this country.
Like migrants. Maybe they don't like gay people or black people or the woman who got the promotion at work they didn't get. Whatever the reason,
Not everybody who voted for Trump is anti-black, anti-immigrant, See, this is the problem again with the elite liberal mindset with people like Hillary Clinton. That's what she thinks. That's what she thinks.
Make America Great Again was a bid for nostalgia, to return to a place where, people could be in charge of their lives, feel empowered, say what they want, insult whoever came in their way. And that was really attractive to a significant portion of the Republican base.
Was it the same when Bill Clinton said, "Make America Great Again"? Does Hillary Clinton, when Bill Clinton said, "Make America Great Again," does Hillary believe that it was meant so that people can insult whoever they want? A lot of people said this. Ronald Reagan said, make America great again. Bill Clinton said, "Make America great again." It didn't start with Donald Trump, and Hillary Clinton knows that.
So it is like a cult, and somebody has to break the, break that momentum. And that's why I believe Joe Biden will defeat him. And hopefully then that will be the end and the fever will break. And then Republicans can try to get back to, fighting about issues among themselves and electing people who are at least, responsible and accountable.
If she believed that Joe Biden would beat Donald Trump, she wouldn't be doing all these interviews. She doesn't believe that. She believes that there is actually a chance that Joe Biden could lose to Donald Trump this time around. That's why people like her are coming out to do all these interviews. People like Barack Obama. That's why you see Ro Khanna on all these interviews all the time, cheesing all up in the camera, telling people President Biden has done a great job and we just got to tell the story better. That's why you see people like Pramila Jayapal doing all these interviews, telling people have not been giving President Joe Biden enough credit. He really has done a phenomenal job. That's why they keep bringing all these same people to give that message and continue to hammer that message into people's heads, because there is some truth to the fact that if you continue to repeat the same words over and over, eventually it will sink into people's head and they'll believe it. Right? This is something we learned, like as educators, this is something we learned from like the beginning, like day one. Is like, how do you get students to listen to you? How do you get them to remember what to do? You repeat it over and over and over again until it sinks into their head. So that's why they continue to have these interviews where they interview those politicians to convince the American people that, hey, maybe I was wrong. Maybe Joe Biden is doing a really good job. Problem is, we still have inflation, and people see that when they go to their bank account, they look at their bank account. When they go to pay for gas, when they go to the grocery store, people see that their material conditions have not improved. They've actually become worse, particularly for those who are working class and those who are poor. Rich people are all right, though. They still doing fine. So if she believed that Joe Biden was going to beat Donald Trump, she wouldn't be doing all these interviews.
Are you concerned that a third-party candidate on the Democratic side could thwart Joe Biden's chances?
A third-party candidate on the Democratic side. A third-party candidate on the Democrat side. Third-party candidates are challenging the Democrat and the Republican at the same time. I want to say this again. Third-party candidates are challenging the Democrat candidate and the Republican candidate at the same time. Listen to what Hillary says.
I am always concerned about a third party. That's what happened to me, as we all can recall. And
no, that's not what happened to you. What happened to you is that you ran a weak campaign that did not cater to working class and poor people. You did not speak to working class and poor people, and unless you were trying to pander to them. The couple of times that I saw Hillary trying to speak to working class people, particularly when she was trying to talk to Black people, she tried to pander with stuff like, let me throw in a quote from a Beyonce song. I got that hot sauce in my bag. Because she don't know how to talk to working class people, because she don't talk to people like that. She don't interact with people like that in her everyday life. A lot of them don't. So she's still, here we go. She's still blaming Jill Stein. It's Jill Stein's fault. Last time I checked, Jill Stein did not receive any electoral college votes. Throw that back up in people's face, guys. When they tell you it's Jill Stein's fault, it's Ralph Nader's fault, they didn't receive electoral college votes. It's not Jill Stein's fault. It's Hillary Clinton's fault, because you ran a whack ass campaign. You didn't even really try because you figured, well, Obama did his 2 terms and a lot of people still love Obama, so they're going to like me. No, a lot of people were pissed at Obama after his 2 terms. Obama gave us a Donald Trump. There's a reason why some people who voted for Donald Trump and from Obama in 2008 turned around and voted for Mitt Romney in 2012. There's a reason why people who voted for Obama in 2008 and in 2012 turned around and voted for Donald Trump. I mean, this is why, it's everybody's fault but Hillary. This woman really thinks she's owed the presidency.
Helped by a lot of other forces, and that could happen again this time. So, of course, I worry about anyone who might take votes away from President Biden, because, I'm in the camp, Christiane, that says, why do you actually hire a politician? What is it you want? And what I want is somebody who can get the job done. And Biden has done an amazing job by...
See, they keep doing this. They have to keep saying he's done an amazing job because they know he stands a chance of losing. Like, this is the thing. So she's like, you're going to take votes away from Joe Biden. These are the same people that scream, we need to protect our democracy. But they only want you to vote between 2 parties. They don't want people to run in third party presidential campaign. They don't want people to run as an independent. They only want people to run in the 2-party system. But even then, they don't want people to challenge Joe Biden in the 2-party system. They don't want Marianne Williamson to be there. They didn't want RFK Jr. to be there. He's not running as a Democrat anymore, apparently. So, I mean, it's just, these are the same people that say we got to protect our democracy. But vote how I tell you to vote, damn it. Don't vote for third parties. Don't vote for independents. Don't go out there and vote for a primary challenger against Joe Biden. We're going to protect our democracy, but you're going to vote the way I tell you to vote. Makes no sense.
Any measure. People have talked about infrastructure forever. He passed the bill. People have talked about losing advanced manufacturing to China. He passed the bill. People have talked about getting clean energy actually to produce even more and more jobs. He passed the bill. Negotiating for drug prices. All of these things, which many of us have tried to get done in, the Senate and beyond, he's gotten done. And it's going to change Americans' lives for the better. And it's...
Has your life changed for the better for those who are watching? Did that infrastructure bill that was passed put food on your table for your family? Did it change or decrease the prices at the grocery store? Did it decrease your gas prices? Has the infrastructure bill improved the schools in your neighborhood? This is the things, these things, and this is not to say we cannot improve our infrastructure. We have to. But I also showed you that according to the American Society of Civil Engineers, that infrastructure report is weak. They didn't even approve the dollar amount to maintain the infrastructure, according to the American Society of Civil Engineers. They didn't even do that dollar amount. These things that she's talking about, this don't put food on the table for people. Look at all the homeless people. The homeless population has increased up to 25% under Joe Biden. The end of the eviction moratorium. The cost of rent. The cost of living increase. People can't afford, the average American in this country can't even afford a 1-bedroom apartment where they live. Can't afford to buy a house. Can't afford to put a down payment on a house. These are the kind of things that Hillary Clinton, not only is she leaving it out now, but she left it out in 2016. And that's why she lost.
It's going to enhance and grow our economy. And when people say, well, I don't know, pay attention, please. Pay attention to what he's gotten accomplished. But if you don't want to be for him on the merits the way I am, be for him because the alternative could end our democracy. And I don't say that.
What did I tell you, folks? What did I tell you? This could end our democracy. You telling us that third-party candidates can't be on the ballot or shouldn't be there, that ends our democracy. You telling us who we have to vote for to make you feel comfortable, that ends our democracy. And I told you before, we don't really have a true democracy in this country.
Lightly.
Our chief international anchor, Christiane Amanpour, is back with us now. Christiane, there's a lot that I actually want to discuss with you about that entire interview. But the one thing I was struck by in what we just heard was the idea that if Biden wins in 2024, that's the moment where the fever breaks. I've heard some iteration of that now for 7 or 8 years from Democrats. Do you think she really believes it?
Yeah, I think she really believes it, but more importantly, she really believes it has to happen in order to save America's democracy. As we started, I asked her, is American democracy in trouble? And she said, yes, no thoughts, no hesitation, no nothing. It's in trouble. And that's a problem for this country, and it's a problem for the rest of the world that looks to America for its democratic leadership. So it's a big deal what's happening. And we see across the world the ripple effects of the dysfunction that continues in this city.
All right, let's bring this up. Let's talk about this for just a second. I think some people thought, to that point that Hillary just made, I think that some people thought that after Joe Biden won in 2020, that would break that fever, and that didn't happen. And since the indictments, Donald Trump's support has increased. So I don't know. I could actually see Trump supporters being very upset if Donald Trump lost in 2024, or if he's not allowed to run come 2024. But these are the words of Hillary. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. She's crazy. It's still Jill Stein's fault, bud. It is still Jill's fault, she says. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. I find great solace that no one watching CNN anymore. Hey, remember the time when Senator Ted Kennedy was trying to figure out who to endorse between Hillary and Obama? And the deciding factor was when he got his Irish up when Bill Clinton said to him, you know, in a former life, this N-word would have been getting us our coffee. I remember that. And Kennedy lost his temper and was just like, you're effing racist. Really? If you have not had a chance to do so, guys, go ahead and smash that like button. That helps me with the algo. Thank you very much. We are moving on to probably one of the most talked about stories in the past 24 hours. And this is where I will be spending the majority of the show. Yesterday morning, it was announced, actually, when I woke up, and the first thing I saw when I looked at my phone was that Hamas had decided to do a sneak attack, like when Israel least expected it, right? So by Israel, I mean the state of Israel. And there's some questions I have about that too. We'll get into that in a second. People broke free. I want to first discuss this statement from Hamas, and then we're going to go back through a little bit of history before we get into the events that actually have taken place. Statement from Hamas: we are opening a battle that will expand, escalate, and deepen, and its goal is the freedom of our people and their sanctities and our right to be free and secure in a free and independent homeland. If the whole world were silent, we would not remain silent about the desecration of our sanctities, the attempts to desecrate Al-Aqsa, and the attacks on Al-Aqsa. We will do everything necessary to preserve the dignity, existence, and freedom of our people. There will be no talk even about the details of the dead and captured Israelis and our prisoners in prisons whose freedom is at hand. That was the statement from Hamas. Before we get into the events that started about 24 hours ago, I want to take you back just through a little bit of history, because I think what people have to remember is that the land belongs to the Palestinians. It was their land. So let's start with that. Now, I want to start with this clip here from Dana. Dana posted this. I thought this was very good for people to see. And for those who have questions, let's look at the land loss. I think, did I start from the beginning? Oh, we have to refresh. Let's start from the beginning. Here we go. I don't know why I can't click on this, but whatever. Hold on. We'll have to do it like this because it's one of those that you can't click on because it's a GIF. So let's refresh and I'll show it. Just a little bit for people. 1917. Let's pause. Sorry, guys, it's a GIF, so I have to play around with it a little bit. Pause. 1917. This is Palestine. It's not Israel. So you can see green is the Israeli settlement right here. You can see yellow is Palestine. This is Palestine before the creation of Israel. Let's move forward. 1946, World War II begins, Jewish settlement begins. So you can see the green pockets here start to appear in Palestine. That's 1946. 1947. That didn't take long, did it? That was only a year. Look at the settlement now. So obviously there's more green, less yellow. So it says the UN divides Palestine. (1948, 1949). So you can see now it's to the point where here's Gaza over here. And as you can see, it's almost completely green now. That's 1948, 1949. Israel occupies 77% of the land and declares independence. Let's go on. 2012. You see this? Israel launches massive air campaign on Hamas in Gaza. So as you can see, the parts of Palestine are almost completely gone. And I think that's the last one, 2014. Israel launches massive air campaign on Hamas in Gaza. Watch this. The future. Notice that in the future, if this continues, in the future, Gaza will also be green. Israeli settlement. The Palestinian people have been pushed and pushed further and further out. Now, I show you this to say this. I want you to put yourself in the Palestinian shoes. Imagine if I came to your town and I brought some peeps with me. I came to your town and not only did I come there and say I'm going to live there, but I came there and I said, yeah, this is your land. This is now my land. I'm going to take that land. You don't have land anymore. And over time, more people come and we occupy more of the land that was once yours, to the point where you are basically reduced to a small portion of the country that was yours. So we tell you, you can stay if you want, but now we have the majority of the land. Oh, and by the way, you can only move from point A to point B. We're going to put up a border. We're going to put up this fence around our territory that we stole from you and the territory where we're going to put you. And we are creating an open air prison so you cannot move beyond those bounds. How would you feel? How would you feel if, to add on to that, I tell you, you can still have electricity and water, but we are going to minimize how much you get to have because it's our land now. 95% of your water is going to be dirty. Maybe we'll give you 40% electricity. Oh, and by the way, for the people who choose to try to rise up against us that are part of your people, anytime they try to rise up, we're going to come after all of you. Now they'll tell the media and tell everybody else, yeah, we had to bomb that building because Hamas was hiding out there. Next thing you know, that building goes from Hamas was hiding out there to a hospital, a school, journalists, kids being beaten in the street, Palestinians killed just because the land is not theirs. What you have is settler colonialism. So what you saw happen yesterday, let's go ahead and pull it up. That fence, that open air prison that I was telling you about, the fence is being torn down. The people.
الله أكبر شرفوا يا جماعة الله يرحم الجدار روح الله أكبر أيوة الله أكبر الله أكبر.
These are the people, these are the Palestinian people trying to break free. How would you feel if you had to live that way? Now, Anya talked about this when she was on the show recently. She was there. She was there in Gaza. She said, I visited Gaza in 2018 and saw for myself the open air prison that Israel has imposed upon millions of Palestinians for over 15 years. Every act of resistance in Palestine is justified. Israel's existence is an unprovoked attack on humankind. Look at this. This is when Anya was with RT. This is back in the day.
The Gaza Strip, electricity shortages have already pushed hospitals near collapse, forcing doctors to deny patients basic medical procedures. Now imagine you have a disease like cancer. You have to get through this gate, as well as the heavily militarized Israeli-controlled border fence on the other side, just to receive life-saving treatment. According to a new report released by human rights groups, last year the Israelis denied a record amount of permits, leading to the deaths of over 50 Gaza residents.
This is just medical permits for Palestinians to go to the hospitals to get treatment. And they probably have a higher rate of those cancers, like Anya was pointing to, because if you're giving people dirty water, obviously that's going to increase the chance of them to have illness and disease. Let's continue.
According to a joint study released by several human rights groups, including Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and Gaza's Al-Mazan Center for Human Rights, Israel approved only 54% of permits for medical appointments in 2017, the lowest rate since the World Health Organization began keeping track of the data. Zakia Tafish's husband, Jamil, is one of those numbers.
2 months before July of last year, my husband went to the hospital and they discovered that his cancer had returned, and they started to give him treatment and medicine, but it didn't work. They said he needs surgery, and every time he got an appointment to get surgery, the hospital postponed it because they said the only solution is to leave Gaza. But he wasn't.
That part right there. Not even wanting to give the people treatment because they are Palestinian. The only solution they told them was to leave.
Able to leave Gaza because he wasn't allowed. He got a referral to a hospital in Jerusalem, and every time he wanted to travel, the Israeli border was closed. Every time he wanted to travel, they closed the border and make an excuse.
For Jamil Tafish, the denial of this life-saving permit was only the final chapter in a long struggle with Israeli control.
During the 2014 war, we evacuated the house to my daughter's place in downtown, and when we returned, we found it completely destroyed. My husband became consumed with rage, and his cancer came back. We became homeless, and when we finally rebuilt the house, he wasn't able to enjoy it.
In a short while, I'll be leaving the Gaza Strip. As a member of the foreign media, it wasn't difficult for me to secure this pass from the Israeli government, guaranteeing my travel to and from the territory. But for too many Palestinians, even those diagnosed with life-threatening illnesses, there's no such magic pass. Only a death sentence handed down by an ever-present occupation.
What people have to understand, because some people will ask this question, Why not give them their own hospitals and their own all this so they don't have to worry about getting through that border, right? So in other words, you mean separate but equal? Because if we've learned anything in reference to separate but equal in this particular country, we've learned that yes, you can be separate, but it won't be equal when you're the minority because the majority has all the resources. The state of Israel, they control the water. They control the air. They control all of it. The electricity, they control it. The Palestinians don't control anything. So this is why I used to tell people, even with the two-state solution, this whole, oh, let's just be separate but equal, that doesn't work. It doesn't work when you're in the minority and you don't control the resources. Now, there's been argument over whether or not people who are facing some type of occupation, occupied people, whether or not people who are occupied have the right to resistance. And that's the question I want you to hold on to. Do occupied people have the right to resistance?
And now, make an excuse. For Jamil Tafish, the denial of...
I don't know why that did that. Rania Khaled came in and she said, some argue it's reckless for Palestinian groups to launch resistance operations because of the violent Israeli reaction it provokes. But Israel is constantly engaging in overwhelming violence with or without resistance to it. And I'm actually going to show you an example. I think that is an excellent point that Rania makes. She goes on to say here, calling Palestinian resistance reckless is essentially telling Palestinians to sit down and submit to being treated worse than animals and to never stand up and defend or try to liberate themselves. What some people have been saying is that the Palestinians should just sit there and accept what has been happening to them. They should just accept being occupied. They should just accept that their land is no longer their land. Is that the case? I ask you, do people who are occupied, do occupied people have the right to resistance? What if someone came in and tried to occupy you? When we look at the conflicts, when we look at the battle, you will see that it's the Palestinian lives that are being lost when you look at the two. Here's the comparison right here, year by year. The human cost of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, death/injuries, documented by the United Nations. Look who's losing the most people. Surprise! 2008, Palestine, over 3,000, Israel over 800. 2009, Palestine, over 7,000, Israel over 100. 2010, Palestine over 1,600, Israel over 100, 185. 2011, Palestine over 2,200, Israel over 130. And why is this happening again? Again, who has the resources? 2012, Palestine over 4,900, Israel over 500. 2013, Palestine over 4,000, Israel over 157. 2014, over 19,800 Palestinians. Israel over 2,700. 2015, over 14,800 Palestinians, Israel over 330. 2016, Palestine over 3,500, Israel over 220. 2017, Palestine over 8,500, Israel over 174. 2018, Palestine over 31,000, Israel over 130. 2019, Palestine over 15,600, Israel over 133. 2020, Palestine over 2,700, Israel 61. When people say, let's compare, this is the comparison people need to show. It's obvious who's having the most casualties. One of the things that was interesting to me, and you'll see this speech from Joe Biden in just a second, is that one of the things that came up multiple times by different politicians on social media is that how dare they? They have attacked Israeli people on a holy day as if this did not happen to Palestinian people. I want to remind you that it did. And all those politicians were silent when it happened. Q Anthony says every Ramadan, the IDF storms Al-Aqsa Mosque, smoke bombs the place, cracks open the skulls of worshipers, and zip ties women and children face down on the ground. Time to grow up, kids. Oppressed people are not your plush toys. And I want to show you an example. The West is sleeping when Israeli forces were beating Palestinian women at Al-Aqsa Mosque. So for the people who are pretending like this was only happening to the Israelis on their holy day, I want to remind you, this happened to the Palestinians on theirs. We'll have to refresh. There we go. Sorry, Twitter's like that sometimes. See this? So you'll see, I'll show you from the beginning what happened to her. You see that? What is she doing wrong? These are Israeli forces. What does she do wrong? This is the kind of stuff they don't want to talk about. They don't want you to see. I don't want any lives to be lost. But the question you have to come back to again and ask yourself, do occupied people have the right to resist? Now, Joe Biden issued a statement after the attack. And there's a couple of things I want to point out in this statement, too, that I think are very telling. Listen to this.
Say to them and to the world and to terrorists everywhere that the United States stands with Israel. We will not ever fail to have their back. We'll make sure that they have the help their citizens need and they can continue to defend themselves.
Whenever you hear them make this statement, that they can continue to defend themselves, notice you never hear them say that the Palestinian people should have the right to defend themselves. So I ask you again, do occupied people have the right to resistance?
You know, the world's seen appalling images. Thousands of rockets in the space of hours raining down on Israeli cities. When I got up this morning, started this at 7:30, 8 o'clock, my calls. Hamas terrorists crossing in Israel, killing not only Israeli soldiers, but Israeli civilians in the street, in their homes. Innocent people murdered, wounded, entire families taken hostage by Hamas.
And Joe Biden says this as though this has not been happening to Palestinian people all these years. And when it happens to the Palestinian people, Joe Biden doesn't come and make a press conference. These presidents, the politicians, they don't come and make a press conference and say, it's terrible what happened to the Palestinians that were in the school that was bombed. It's terrible what happened to those kids. They don't come and say that. They don't even talk about it. Because they've shown you multiple times that a Palestinian person's life in that particular region, it don't matter to them. It don't matter to them because they are in bed with the Israeli lobby. This all goes back to money, people. You see, Israel can do something for the U.S. government, and the U.S. government can do something for Israel monetarily. The Palestinian people can't do anything for the U.S. government. So this is how the U.S. government treats other countries and people that can't do anything for us monetarily. This is what you got to bring it back to, people. This is why they can do this. This is why they will bomb people in Somalia, in Afghanistan, in Libya, in Yemen. These are not people that can help us monetarily. So they are willing to just say, yes, Joe Biden rolls out $8 billion to send to Israel. $8 billion. Just like that, overnight. But they don't want to give you anything. Nothing. So the Palestinian people are just supposed to die? If someone comes to your house and they tell you, get out your house, it's mine now, you're not supposed to push back? Let him continue.
Just days after Israel marked the holiest of days in the Jewish calendar is unconscionable. You know, when I spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu this morning, I told him the United States stands with the people of Israel in the face of these terrorist assaults.
But we do not stand, and this is the thing I want you to take home, guys. You never hear them say they stand with the Palestinians. You never hear them say that. Never.
Israel has the right to defend itself and its people. Full stop. There's never justification for terrorist attacks. And my administration's support for Israel's security is rock solid and unwavering. Let me say this as clearly as I can.
For Israel's security. You see that?
This is not a moment for any party hostile to Israel to exploit these attacks to seek advantage. The world is watching. I've also been in contact with the King of Jordan, spoken with members of Congress, directed my national security team to engage with their Israeli counterparts, military to military, intelligence to intelligence, diplomat to diplomat, to make sure Israel has what it needs. I've also directed my team to remain in constant contact with leaders throughout the region, including
to make sure that Israel has what it needs. And you have the people, the Palestinians, that have been living in an open air prison. And there was never that concern or question to make sure that they had what they needed. Never.
Egypt, Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Oman, the UAE, as well as our European partners and the Palestinian Authority. It's also a terrible tragedy on a human level. It's hurting innocent people. Seeing the lives that have been broken by this, the families torn apart, it's heartbreaking.
But when the innocent Palestinians were killed, no comment. No comment. You know what you do with oppression? You teach two different groups of people that one life is better than the other. So for the Palestinians, they've been taught that the Israeli people are better than them. And not everyone in Israel agrees with what the government is doing. Not everyone in Israel agrees with what the state government of Israel is actually doing to the Palestinians. I want to make that very clear. But you teach them that they are less than. And oppressed people have to deal with that type of trauma the rest of their lives. So for the Palestinians, for those who ever get a chance to get out, if they get out, they still have that oppression to deal with. They still have that trauma. Now, who else went through this? African Americans had to go through it. Indigenous people had to go through it. When the settlers, when the colonialists came to the United States or came to North America and pushed the indigenous people out, killed them. And what was left of them told them, you get this little bit of land. It's called a reservation, and this where you stay. What did that do to the psyche of indigenous people in this country? This type of trauma, this type of oppression, it lasts with people for a long time, and not just with the people that it happened to, but their kids and their grandparents' kids. We need to think about that.
Jill and I are praying for those families who've been impacted by this violence. We grieve with those who've lost their loved ones, lost a piece of their soul. We have hope for swift recovery for many who have been wounded. But we're going to remain in close touch with Prime Minister. I personally am going to remain in close contact with Prime Minister Netanyahu as this situation continues to develop. And let there be no mistake, the United States stands with the state of Israel, just as we have from the moment the United States became the first nation to recognize Israel 11 minutes after its founding 75 years ago. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, was there an intelligence failure?
See, he's already just ready to go right off the stage. And this is what our government wants us to do. They want us to just pretend like nothing has been happening to the Palestinian people. I'm going to show you this video of this young girl in just a second, but I want to show you this first. Now, this is from Gritty's The Way, because I want you to understand what this is really about. Were there not in Israel, the United States would have to go out and invent in Israel to protect her interests in the region. Listen to this. This is Joe Biden, and this was from C-SPAN. Shout out to Gritty The Way for finding this.
We look at the Middle East. I think it's about time we stop, those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make.
Money.
Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel. We look at the Middle East. I think it's about time we stop, those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region.
That part right there is very important. That if there wasn't an Israel, the U.S. would have to invent one to protect our interest in the region. I hope everybody remembers that. Somebody feel free to clip that and share that, because that's very telling. But I want to show you this little girl. I remember I covered this when this story first broke. She's only 10 years old, and I covered this story. This is before I did live streams. It's still on my channel. You can find it. And I said to myself, like, hopefully this resonates with people and this gets through to people. Because this little girl, she's not a one-off.
I don't know. I can't do anything. See all of this. What? I'm always sick. I don't know. I can't do anything. See all of this. What do you expect me to do? Fix it? I'm only 10. I can't even do anything anymore. I just want to be a doctor or anything to help my people. I can't. I'm just a kid. I don't even know what to do. I get scared, but not really that much. I do anything for my people, but I don't know what to do. I'm just 10. I'm just 10. All of this, when I see it, I literally cry every day, saying to myself, why do we deserve this? What did we do to this? My family said they just hate us. They just don't like us because we are Muslims. Why does Muslims act for you like that? We're just kids. You see all of the kids around me? They're just kids. Why wouldn't you just send a missile to them and kill them?
I wanted everybody to see this because, like I said before, these are just kids. This is a residential area. Residential area. That girl is only 10 years old. But because it's a Palestinian girl, we're told we're really not supposed to support. To make it worse, people lost their damn mind on social media yesterday. People lost their damn mind. One of them that lost their mind was Charlie Kirk. We're going to start with him first. I'm going to tell you how some of the things that people were doing. Some people were just outright lying. So Charlie Kirk, he deleted this tweet, but that's okay because I got the screenshot, okay? I said, if you zoom in and look at the uniform, you would see these are Israeli soldiers, people showing their whole ass today. So let me show you what Charlie Kirk said because he tried to lie. He said, warning, horrifying video of Hamas militants going door to door, killing Israeli citizens. So when this video was still posted, all I had to do was zoom in on the video to see the uniform that those soldiers were wearing. So when you saw the uniform, there was a badge. So you knew that was the Israeli badge. So I knew that was not Hamas. Those were actually Israeli soldiers. And Charlie Kirk was out here telling people that this was Hamas going door to door, killing Israeli citizens. Over thousands of people were liking that tweet. So either one or two things happened. Either he didn't take the time to actually zoom in and look at the uniforms of the soldiers. He saw someone else tweet this video and thought he tweeted as well and used the same language. Or he did know and he was trying to lie. I think it was the latter because he deleted it. How could you be so careless? A lot of people were riled up by this yesterday. Charlie Kirk, that's one of them. Then we go on to Hakeem Jeffries, who decided for whatever reason that he thinks that Israel was supposed to be the sixth borough, which he said before. Hakeem's from New York. He's another one. He was the first one that I saw lie about what's been happening between Israel, the Israelis and Palestinians. He said, my statement on the violent, unprovoked, and despicable terrorist attack by Hamas against the state of Israel. What we want to focus on is the word unprovoked. Because you see, a lot of the Democrat politicians got their talking points yesterday. They got their PR talking point, and they were all using the same damn words. Same words, same language. Some of the Republicans too. You're going to see some of them too. Watch this. I strongly condemn the violent and ghastly attack by the terrorist organization Hamas on the Jewish people and the state of Israel. The loss of life in Israel as a result of the violent, calculated, and unprovoked attack by Hamas is heartbreaking. I'm going to tell you why unprovoked is a lie. You brutalize these people for years. You strip their land from them. You put them in an open air prison. You bomb them whenever you feel like it. Residential buildings, hospitals, schools. And you say that it's unprovoked? What were the Palestinian people supposed to do? Just die? Just sit back and continue to take it? This is the talking point they all have. America stands firmly and unequivocally with Israel. We will strongly support Israel's right to defend herself from this despicable attack that targeted civilians, including Israeli children, with rockets, gunfire, and violent kidnappings. The Congress must stand with Israel until the invasion by Hamas has been crushed and security in southern Israel and throughout the country has been permanently restored. Let's talk about security. I thought it was a little bit strange that all of a sudden, the other night, Israeli security just seemed to not be around. That was interesting to me. So that's something I still question. The way that they have been treating the Palestinian people, all of a sudden, one night, they just not around, take a break. People need to think about that. But Hakeem Jeffries is lying. It's really disgusting to me when I see black people, we'll go to the second part when you're ready, Eric. When I see black people sit up here and not stand up for the Palestinian people, it is very disgusting and disturbing to me. At one point in time, black people, African Americans in this country stood strong with the Palestinian struggle. What happened? You got Uncle Toms like Hakeem Jeffries that decided he wanted to build a political career. And in order to do that, he knew he had to suck up to the right people and the right fucking lobby. Him, Richie Torres, these people. It's disgusting. And you should be ashamed of yourself. Then there was RFK Jr. And yesterday, RFK Jr. lost some supporters because RFK went on this tangent. And honey, I'm surprised he has not deleted this yet. People were handing him the business yesterday because of this. So RFK says this ignoramus, unprovoked, see this? See the talking point? Unprovoked. So now you have RFK Jr. using the same language as Hakeem Jeffries. What that tell you about RFK? We'll go on. This ignominious, unprovoked, and barbaric attack on Israel must be met with world condemnation and unequivocal support for the Jewish state's right to self-defense. We must provide Israel with whatever it needs to defend itself now. And this is where, ladies and gentlemen, some of RFK's supporters yesterday realized this is not a peace candidate. This is not a peace candidate. He goes on to say, as president, I'll make sure that our policy is unambiguous so that the enemies of Israel will think long and hard before attempting aggression of any kind. I applaud the strong statements of support from the Biden White House for Israel in her hour of need. However, the scale of these attacks means it is likely that Israel will need to wage a sustained military campaign to protect its citizens. Statements of support are fine, but we must follow through with unwavering, same vocabulary as Biden, resolute and practical action. America must stand by our ally throughout this operation and beyond as it exercises its sovereign right to self-defense. And with this one statement, RFK Jr. showed people that motherfucker was not that much different from the people who are already in DC. Because some people, some politicians, some of these candidates, they good when it comes to the war in Ukraine. And they say, no, we do not need to be giving them any more money. We need to call for peace. But change the country and see how they move. Change Ukraine and put in Israel. Change Ukraine and put in China and see what their response is. He lost some supporters yesterday. One of them is Kim Iverson. you know, this was very bold of Kim because she's interviewed, you know, RFK and, you know, he likes her. I think he said he likes coming onto her show, but Kim did not hold back yesterday. And this is just one of the tweets. Kim said, and there goes my Kennedy vote out the window. And she wasn't the only one. That's what I'm trying to tell you. There were many out the window, because what RFK Jr. is essentially saying is he is supporting giving Israel aid and weapons to potentially commit a genocide of the Palestinian people, because that's what would happen. They would wipe them out. She went on to say, here's RFK Jr. losing votes as he advocates for Israel to carpet bomb Gaza and continue to create the very situation that provoked the current events. If you lock people into a small area, deny them basics like water and electricity, and bomb them any chance you can excuse, they are bound to retaliate and defend themselves. I am horrified what is happening on any battlefield. War is ugly. People die. We need to advocate for peaceful resolutions to both the Ukraine-Russia conflict and the Israel-Palestine conflict. And one thing that stood out to me is notice that RFK Jr. did not call for peace. Notice he didn't call for a ceasefire. He said, give them mofos weapons so they can fight. Peace candidate, my ass. I tried to tell people about this motherfucker. I tried to tell people. She went on to say, the war raging in Israel is 100% provoked and a long time brewing. Like the current Russia-Ukraine conflict, many have been warning of this for a very long time. Israel has been subjugating and torturing an entire group of people for decades. How long did anyone think they could go before rising up to defend themselves? War is horrendous. I am horrified by all who die on both sides of any war. Israel needs to get serious about negotiating a genuine good faith peace agreement with Palestine, or this will happen again and again. Again, notice the difference. She's actually calling for peace. There were more. Daniel McAdams, and if I remember correctly, I believe he spoke at the Rage Against the War Machine rally. If I remember correctly, I think Daniel spoke. Daniel wasn't trying to hear that neither. Daniel said, wait a minute. I have never seen a presidential campaign commit suicide like this, ever. Read the comments. People who loved him 100%, repudiating their support. Everyone put a fork in him. He's done. Unbelievable. That was from Daniel. Yeah, the comments are bad, but Angela McArdle. Okay, so she is the chair of the Libertarian Party. They even had some things to say. Reminder to candidates who may seek the Libertarian Party nomination or try to gain the votes of independents. The majority of us do not support U.S. involvement in overseas military conflicts. This includes Israel. Lots, I think she means lots of us. Oh, lots of strong feelings. Lots of strong feelings over the attacks, but we shouldn't escalate things between Israel and Palestine. So when I saw this, I was like, could she possibly be talking about RFK Jr.? And then I saw this from the Libertarian Party. We are the only ones who are actually anti-war in every context, not just when it's convenient. All of the disenfranchised anti-war supporters of RFK Jr. are welcome in the Libertarian Party. And I saw that and I said, honey, I said, I guess RFK won't be running the Libertarian Party. Yikes. Wasn't just him. Ron DeSantis' whack ass. The same guy He killed me. The same guy's like, oh, when it comes to, Ukraine and Russia, no, I don't think we should give a blank check. And, I think that we should, try to come to a peaceful resolution, but I don't really want to change the country to Israel and see the difference. Here's Ron DeSantis and his whack ass making a statement in support too. Listen.
Israel is now under attack. I stand with Israel. America stands with Israel. Not only do they have a right to defend themselves, they have a duty to defend themselves against these Iranian-backed Hamas terrorists. Iran has helped fund this war against Israel, and Joe Biden's policies that have gone easy on Iran has helped to fill their coffers. Israel is now paying the price for those policies. We're going to stand with the state of Israel. They need to root out Hamas, and we need to stand up to Iran.
You see how quickly Ron DeSantis can come out and speak firmly about his support for Israel. And just like that, boom, just take a side. No, try to call for peace or ceasefire or anything. But when it comes to Russia and Ukraine, yeah, we need to talk about peace negotiations. You see how this changed? That's because who we get money from? Who's Ron DeSantis donors? You got to make the connection. And I wasn't happy. I was not happy with Cornel West's response either. Now, he didn't say what they said, but I don't think this went well. Because Dr. West said the escalation of the barbaric violence in the Middle East must stop. The vicious Israeli occupation and the ugly Palestinian retaliation results in the killing of precious innocent people on both sides. We must have a lasting peace based on justice. Here's the problem. Actually, let me do it this way. This is one of those times where you can't both sides. You can't both sides it. Because again, go back to the question I asked you at the very beginning of this story. Do occupied people have a right to resistance? If someone comes in and they occupy your land and your home and they limit to you to this small amount of space in an open air prison, and they tell you how you can and what cannot move, and they bomb you whenever they feel like it, 95% of the drinking water is dirty, like they cut off the electricity when they feel like it, they treat you like an animal. What are the Palestinian people supposed to do? So for me, it's just, I think that Dr. West wanted to do, well, let's call for, peace. We need to stop this, that kind of thing. And I get that, but you can't both sides oppression. The people who are oppressed and the people who are occupied, those people they don't have the power. They don't have the resources. Israel controls all the resources. They can control the water. They control the electricity. They control the air. And they're backed and funded by the U.S. government. The Palestinian people are the minority. So in a sense, it's like when you say on both sides, ugly Palestinian retaliation or resistance? So you say, well, what are those people supposed to do? And I know, because Dr. West, remember Dr. West was denied tenure at Harvard because he stood up for the Palestinian people. Because he was like, no. So I don't know what's happening here. I really don't. So I was disappointed to see that, because I'm like, no, we know what the deal is here. Even Afeni was disappointed by it. Afeni said, this is the most disappointing shit I've ever seen. One side has actively and aggressively stolen land from the other. One side beats people while they pray in one of the holiest places in Islam. Palestinian people should be defending themselves. Because I'm going to let you guys know something right now. If you came to my house and you tell me this is mine and you got to move out, or you can only occupy yourself, you can only stay in this one room of your house, you ain't coming through the door without a fight. Because you come try to take my land, you come try to take my property from me, you're going to have to catch these hands. So should the Palestinian people just sit back? This is the problem. So that one came from Afeni. Now, there was another statement, and Eric, when you have that one, let me know. There was another statement that was issued by Dr. West's campaign on the website. Now, this is different from what is said on Twitter, but unfortunately, the thing is the Twitter statement went out first. So people saw that first, and for people not looking on the website, most of them have not seen this statement. So I'm going to show the other statement. The other people I showed you, by the way, their statements ain't fucking changed. So there's nothing for me to show you with them. So this is what he said on the website. So this is a little bit more detailed. Dr. West calls for immediate cessation of violence in the Holy Land and an end to illegal occupation of Palestinians. Urges Western colonial powers to be conscious of their rhetoric and to push for peace, not war. So it goes on to say, whoop, I just want to make it bigger. Independent presidential candidate Dr. West today urged for peace in the Holy Land upon learning about the situation in Palestine and Israel that has already left hundreds dead and even more people injured. For this to occur on the Jewish Sabbath, on the day when the festival of Sukkot reaches its conclusion and Jewish siblings around the globe celebrate Shemtat Torah, the joy associated with their holy book is heartbreaking and a call for global action, explained Dr. West. He continued, until the global community holds up the value of precious Palestinian lives in line with the value of precious Jewish lives, this violent cycle of death and destruction will continue unabated. Dr. West called for an immediate cessation of all violence, including violent rhetoric uttered by certain Western nations. He shared Western nations and colonial powers from right here in the United States and the European Union must be conscious of their language as their situation unfolds. We need not allow our words to act as fuel to exacerbate a fire that's been burning for too many decades. He added, President Biden and other world leaders must spend less time conjuring a fog of war with subjective and violent vernacular associated with who does and who doesn't have the right to defend themselves, and more time evoking a language of love and dignity for all people involved. And then it goes on to say here, a well-known Christian with roots in liberation theology, Dr. West called on a global community to immediately commence a discussion that will end the war between Israel and Palestine once and for all. We all desire to manifest the beautiful scripture of Isaiah 2:4. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. However, this is not to be a reality until Israel and Western nations understand that the pathway to and for peace in the Holy Land must be parallel with a pathway to and for liberation and dignity for Palestine. Dr. West offers his prayers, his love, and his condolences for the lives lost and injured, and his hopes for immediate and lasting de-escalation initiatives. So that's a better response than the tweet, but I still don't think that was the best response. And I do have that one. Don't I have, oh, there should be, Eric, there should have been a link from, I can't go back and check it. Yeah, there should have been one more at the end because I did want to show people who I thought had the best response. Yeah, it's this one. Yep. Out of all the responses between those who are politicians and those who are political candidates, I really do think Claudia de la Cruz had the best response. She said, today, those supporting colonialism and Zionism will demonize Palestine for asserting its right to take back what has been violently taken. Today, the world says, long live self-determination, long live resistance, free, free Palestine, long live Palestine. Because I felt that Claudia was addressing the fact that it's their land, it was violently taken, and they have the right to defend their self. And when we hear politicians say that Israel has the right to defend their self, but they won't say that the Palestinians have the right to defend their self, what they're telling you is that the Palestinians don't have that right according to them. They're telling you that it's okay for the Palestinians to remain in the open air prison and to deal with the abuse. And I don't agree with that. So that was from Claudia de la Cruz. She was on the show recently. She's running for president 2024. And I really thought that she had the best response from anyone who's a candidate and a politician. Now, and I can tell you about Jill Stein's response too, which I saw right before I went live, but she's not a candidate, at least not yet, if possible. And she's not a politician right now. But first and foremost, I want to show you this, because when we talk about other countries, there are protests all across the United States. There are also protests in other countries for the Palestinian people. People in Turkey rose up to protest in favor of the Palestinian fight. And also Saudi Arabia. And this is very telling, because Saudi Arabia is supposed to be a U.S. ally, although they also have been invited to join BRICS too. So Saudi kind of moving how they want to move these days. And they issued this statement. Official statement from the Saudi Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia holds Israel responsible for what happened due to its repeated provocations and deprivation of rights of Palestinians. U.S. ally. Saudi Arabia said that. You can see the actual letter here. There we go. Here we go. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is closely following developments in the unprecedented situation between a number of Palestinian factions and the Israeli occupation forces, which has resulted in a high level of violence taking place on a number of fronts there. The kingdom calls for an immediate halt to the escalation between the two sides, the protection of civilians, and restraint. The kingdom is reminded of its repeated warnings of the danger of an explosive situation as a result of the continued occupation and deprivation of the Palestinian people of their rights, legitimacy, and repeated systematic provocations against its sanctities. The kingdom renews its call on the international community to assume its responsibilities and activate a credible peace process that leads to a two-state solution in a way that achieves security and the peace in the region and protects its civilians. And I told you guys, I don't agree with a two-state solution. And I said before, because there's too many settlements, there's no way that would work out. But Saudi Arabia out here letting you know, I don't know what the U.S. government is doing, but we are not about that life. And it's very telling. Eric, can we pull up Jill Stein? Jill Stein said something right before I went live. And I just want people to understand, I don't want anyone to be abused. I don't want anyone to die. I don't want anything. I don't want this violence to happen to people. And I don't want the Palestinian people to have to continue to live in this prison. I don't want them to feel like they're not free, to not be able to walk about their own freaking land. If you have politicians like Joe Biden, If you can congratulate and you can speak highly of people like Nelson Mandela fighting back against apartheid in South Africa, but you ignore the Palestinian struggle and fight in Israel, who are you? How can you sit there and pretend like they're not going through the same thing? This was Jill Stein's response. When a murderous occupation makes peaceful resistance impossible, it makes violent resistance inevitable. Free Palestine. Lana said she got that right. Free Palestine. Let me go to the comments on Rockfin, Eric, and then I'll get the ones on YouTube. Thank you, Roger Meadows, for the tip on Rockfin. Hey, Sabby, don't worry. Here comes the NLRB to the rescue. Also, remember, Alfeka Murtade from the National Infrastructure Bank Coalition said the infrastructure bill was lacking. Yes, she did say that. Thank you for this as well. Want to see a conservative turn into a liberal real quick? Watch how quick they are with the pen to sign checks to send abroad, propping up other countries' military campaigns. Want to see a progressive turn conservative real quick? Ask them to cut and sign the check for lineage-based reparations. Palestinians are the same as Native Americans fighting the occupiers. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. Sabrina, it is any surprise that the U.S. government is on the side of the occupier, since that is the same way they got this land. Sabby got Mommy Meadows upset talking about this issue, LOL, then got reminded of the migrant issue. Then my born-again Christian sister starts talking about it's not going to end until Jesus comes back. And then Mommy rolls her eyes and we both start laughing. There she goes again. Thank you for this as well. Sabrina, Uncle Professor Leonard Jeffries is still for Palestinians. Unfortunately, nephew Hakeem Jeffries is not. These people chose to turn a blind eye when me, Lucy, and the gang exposed RFK for what he was back in July. Imagine if we were able to get the same level of indignation of RFK not supporting reparations. Bingo. Because when I tell you that I don't play that shit, like the number of Zionists that all of a sudden exist on social media, people showed their whole ass yesterday. Very nasty comments. Thank you, Disco Phil. Question: Hamas was chosen by the Palestinian people, even though Hamas calls for the elimination of Israel. Is this true? If so, is peace possible? I'm not certain if they were chosen by the Palestinian people. I'd have to check on that one. Karen says, of course, they want to empower the right Republicans. They're on the same team. Thank you, Delthea. If HRC can get away with mystifying why people vote for Trump, she doesn't have to explain why people aren't voting for Biden. Ooh. Thank you, James. Gaetz has said if the impeachment were serious, Jordan would have subpoenaed Hunter. Hard to believe MSN's spin on Gaetz' skepticism of impeachment. Interesting. Thank you, Echo J. Why did the UN decide Palestinians should take the L after World War II when it was Nazi Germany that displaced and murdered Jews? Israel should be in Europe. Honey, you got some questions today. That's a good question. Thank you, Breakup Google. Talk about the USS Liberty. Thank you, Morgan, for the super sticker. Thank you, Apazamosi. Seeing how the West has united in its support for Israel, plus how we're demonizing Palestinians, is terrifying. What Ukraine couldn't achieve has been achieved by destabilizing the Middle East again. Thank you, Marvin. Who has Israel's back as they do crimes? USA. Thanks, Regine. Thank you, Sabby. It's all about money. Speak the truth, Sabby. According to our president, Jewish life is more precious than Palestinian. Sounds familiar. Thank you, DC. World War I was the last crusade. Changed my mind. Thank you for the super sticker, Herbal Annie in the house. Herbal Annie in the house. I like that name. Thank you, Yasim. Thank you, Sabby. Thank you for your exemplary journalism job. Very much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you, Marvin. Israel will blame Iran for this. World War III. US dollars for Zion. More US dollars for Zion. Thank you, Keith. Someone should confront him with that video of that girl and tell him he's for that. He is an absolutely grotesque, barbaric Kennedy. Israel will never accept him anyway, so I don't see his point. Thank you, Paula, for the super sticker. Saka, Papa, Sabby Sabs, please try to get Mohammed El Kurd on your show, please. I can do that. Thanks, Phil. Love to Palestinians and Sabby from a libertarian. Shout out to the Phil. Shout out to a kid. Sabby, how quickly Joe Biden stepped up for Israel and still Hawaiians in Maui are still waiting for help. And in Flint, how is that possible? That's right. Thank you, R. Bailey, for the super sticker. Penguins in the house. Penguins in the house. And thank you, John. U.S. media blacking out pro-Palestinian marches in the States. Yep. You got to take it to indie media. If you follow Chuck Modi on Twitter, he's actually covering, he has a couple of clips from DC. There's some people showing clips from New York. And I believe Code Pink has clips posted as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, they do. Yeah. So Code Pink as well. But yeah. All right. And I think that is my time, guys. So tomorrow is Monday. I am off on Monday. I will be back Tuesday evening live, and I look forward to hearing from all of you guys then. But yeah. I hope you learned something today. I told you that story would take the longest, so I wanted to make sure I was very thorough with that particular story. But free Palestine and keep on rocking in the free world. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.